Hello my dear friends, welcome to all of you on my channel The Fight Yourself. A global authority on food security said that in the coming months, as many as 1.1 million people in Gaza could face the most severe levels of hunger. Experts project that northern Gaza will face famine conditions as soon as this month, and that half of the enclave's population will suffer deadly levels of hunger, according to a new report from the global authority that has classified food security crises for decades. The report, released Monday by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Global Initiative, projected that famine is imminent for the 300,000 Palestinian civilians in northern Gaza, where such conditions will develop by the end of May. And by mid-July, as many as 1.1 million people in Gaza could face what the group characterized as the worst stage of hunger: an extreme lack of food, and severe levels of starvation, death, destitution and acute malnutrition. According to the IPC, a famine occurs when three conditions are met. At least 20% of households have an extreme lack of food, at least 30% of children suffer from acute malnutrition, and at least 2 adults, or 4 children, for every 10,000 people die daily from starvation or from disease linked to malnutrition. Although IPC experts conduct and review the analysis necessary to classify a famine, only government and top UN officials can officially make an official declaration. Sign up for the Israel-Hamas war briefing. The latest news about the conflict. Get it sent to your inbox. The report noted that the first condition had already been met, and the second most likely has been reached. Collecting data on the third, malnutrition-linked deaths, is immensely difficult in a war zone, the group has said. The death rate among children appeared higher than for adults, it added, but said it was impossible to ascertain. At least 27 people, including 23 children, have died of malnutrition, dehydration and lack of baby formula, according to the Gazan Health Ministry. Shimon Friedman, a spokesman for the Israeli agency that oversees policy for the Palestinian territories, Kogat, reiterated on Monday Israel's position that it places no limit on the aid that can enter the Gaza Strip. And Eylon Levy, an Israeli government spokesman, called the report an out-of-date picture that does not take into account the latest developments on the ground, including major humanitarian initiatives last week. He also said Israel is taking proactive measures to expand aid delivery in northern Gaza. Last week, Israel allowed a small World Food Program convoy to deliver food to northern Gaza for the first time since Feb. 20. After the report was released, the organization's chief economist, Arif Hussain, warned that time is running out for many Gazans. This is why children are dying, he said. If we don't get in there, they won't be dying in 20 and 30s, they will be dying in hundreds and thousands. Alex de Waal, an expert on humanitarian crises who has written a book about mass starvation, said the situation in Gaza was unprecedented. None of us who've worked in this field have ever seen anything like this, he said. It is absolutely shocking. All of Gaza's 2.2 million people are in at least the third, or crisis, level of food insecurity, meaning that they are not eating enough and are malnourished. Nearly 40% are in the fourth, or emergency, phase, facing extreme food shortages and bearing an increased risk of hunger-related death. And 30% are in the most severe stage, indicating they have almost no food and are facing critical levels of starvation and death. In December, the group warned that famine could occur within 6 months unless fighting stopped immediately and more humanitarian supplies made it into the territory. Since then, the conditions necessary to prevent famine have not been met, the latest report said. The Famine Review Committee, a group within the IPC which studied the report's nutrition analysis, said famine could be prevented by an immediate political decision for a ceasefire together with a significant and immediate increase in humanitarian and commercial access to the entire population of Gaza. The UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, called the report an appalling indictment of conditions on the ground for civilians. The hunger crisis, he said, as an entirely man-made disaster, and the report makes clear that it can be halted. More than 5 months after Israel's campaign against Hamas began, hunger experts estimate that nearly the entire population of Gaza relies on food aid. Israel has eased the restrictions on humanitarian deliveries it established immediately after the Hamas-led attacks of October 7, but aid groups say that the aid reaching Gaza is not sufficient. The UN agency that supports Palestinians said Gaza is receiving only a fraction of what is necessary to prevent conditions from continuing to deteriorate. Much of that aid does not make it much farther than where it crosses the border. Josep Borrell Fontelles, the European Union's top diplomat, urged Israel to allow free, unimpeded, safe humanitarian access. Hunger can't be used as a weapon of war, he said in a statement. Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, rejected Mr. Borrell's criticism, saying that the country allows extensive aid in by air, land and sea. Israel agrees to send a team to Washington to discuss plans for Rafah. Israel's military says Hamas had returned to Gaza's largest hospital. A White House official says Israeli forces killed a senior Hamas military leader in Gaza. Israel blocked the chief of the UN Agency for Palestinians from visiting Gaza. Our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. In a new report, a group of experts warned that famine is imminent in northern Gaza. In the coming months, the report said, as many as 1.1 million people in the territory could face the severest level of hunger classified by the group. Israeli negotiators are traveling to Qatar to participate in a new round of talks aimed at achieving a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages held by Palestinian militants, according to officials. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, who is facing increasing pressure to negotiate a ceasefire, lashed out at Senator Chuck Schumer over his call for elections to be held in Israel when the war winds down. A struggle for life's basics. Most of Gaza's population fled to the southern territory of Rafah, hoping to escape the war. As they hunt for food and shelter, a potential Israeli invasion has added to their fears. A strained lifeline. The United Arab Emirates has maintained its links to Israel throughout the war in Gaza, but the relationship, built on a U.S. broker deal, is under pressure as anger against Israel grows. Shifting ties. Israel's ultra-Orthodox Jewish minority has long lived apart from the nation's secular mainstream, but the war in Gaza has both widened that divide and, in some ways, helped to bridge it. A winding path. The U.S. airman who lit himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy in Washington to protest the war had left an isolated Christian.